The Last Flight Home, based on actual events. Written and read by Rebecca Prophet. Elder Carson carefully picked up his worn book of scriptures and leather-bound journal and placed them on top of the hand-woven mat inside his suitcase. His trusty machete was wrapped in a tie-dyed lava underneath his clothes where it would stay protected for the journey. Elder Carson's insides were a mess of emotions. He was excited to see his family again, yet devastated to have been so abruptly sent home. Elder Carson had been serving as a missionary in the South Pacific country of Kiribati. He spent most of his days swinging a machete with his companion as they hiked through the tropical jungle to teach people about Jesus Christ. He loved the people and they loved him. As a missionary, they followed a code of conduct. They called everyone they met brother and sister, and they were strictly forbidden from going swimming. The not swimming part was hard, however, it couldn't keep them from visiting the ocean each night. They often had to catch their own dinner, and so once teaching and serving was done, they'd spend an hour at the beach letting the waves and the sand roll over their feet. The machetes they carried by their sides came in handy when they needed to chop a stalk of bananas down or crack open a fresh coconut. Elder Carson kicked away a cockroach with his sandals as he looked over at Elder Lanoa, who was also dutifully packing his bags. Elder Carson smiled to himself as he remembered when they had first been assigned as companions. They didn't get along very well, and he had dreaded spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the boisterous Elder Lanoa. But somehow, as the months passed, they grew to love each other, and before long they felt more like brothers than they did missionary companions. Saying goodbye to Elder Lanoa would be the most difficult goodbye of all. In just a few hours, they would both board the same flight. The flight would stop in Fiji, where Elder Lanoa would leave for home, and then continue on to Salt Lake City, where Elder Carson lived. It was unlikely that they would ever see one another again. Elder Carson zipped up his bag and hefted it onto the table. It was all that he would be bringing home from his time here on the island. He breathed the musty, moist smell deep into his nose and called out to his companion. It was frustrating having to leave early, but since COVID-19 had now officially visited every country on Earth, it was mandatory that missionaries from all over the world get home as quickly as possible. The last 7 flights that the 2 elders were supposed to take out of the country had been canceled, and eventually their church chartered its own plane to pick up the missionaries and bring them home. "Elder, are you ready?" called out Elder Carson. Elder Lanoa had a smile that made everyone feel safe. "Yes, Carson, I'm ready." When the elders arrived at the airport, it was packed with young men and women in white shirts and ties, the customary clothing of missionaries. Besides a very small group of other people, there really wasn't anyone else there. Missionaries from all over were gathered to take their flights home. They lined up and one by one were escorted through security. When about 2/3 of the people had gone through the checkout, an announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Although this flight has been chartered by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to bring their missionaries home, we have a group of 11 Fijians who are anxious to return home to their families as well. The flight itself is not full, but we have reached our maximum capacity for weight." Elder Carson turned to look at the group of Fijians. He noticed the tear-streaked faces of a few of the women and the exhausted eyes of some of the men. This obviously wasn't the first flight this group had waited for. Only a few minutes passed in silence before Elder Lanoa, in typical island fashion, boomed out, "So, what should we do?" Startled to hear someone's voice above the murmur, the flight attendant picked up the microphone again.
"It would require that several people leave their bags behind for us to board an additional 11 passengers."
The missionaries immediately started talking around them. Elder Carson looked down at his huge black suitcase rolling beside him. Then he turned to look at the small group again. Most of them were hanging their heads. Suddenly, Elder Lanoa's voice could be heard over the murmur. "Well then, what are we waiting for?" He brought his bag to the front where the stewardess was waiting, and thrusting it at her, he said, "I didn't want to bring all that luggage home anyways." Elder Carson heard an explosion of movement. One by one, elders and sisters opened their bags and, after stuffing a few things into their backpacks, enthusiastically pushed their suitcases towards the front of the room. "Take mine, take this, here! I don't need this." The joyful sounds of missionaries filled up the check-in gate. Slowly, the group of 11 Fijians lifted their head in disbelief. As one person after another abandoned their bags, the Fijian passengers began to look hopeful. Then they smiled, and finally tears of gratitude ran down their worn-out faces. Elder Carson was the 78th passenger to come forward, and after he handed over his bag, the stewardess announced that they had made their goal and the 11 passengers could now board the flight. Cheering erupted in the room as more tears streamed down faces. Suddenly, Elder Carson understood that this is what it meant to be someone's brother. The entire body of people boarded the plane, and within 48 hours, every single passenger had arrived safely on the last flight home.